Hey guys, welcome back to MFO. I appreciate you tuning in. I know it's the end of January, but I'm starting to think about springtime fishing. And there's something that I've been talking to guys about that I absolutely want you to think about. I want you to get prepared for it. I don't want you to miss out when we first start to get out there and be able to do some springtime chatterbait fishing. And so we're going to talk about something new, and not a lot of guys know about this when it comes to chatterbait fishing in the springtime. Stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate that. And guys, before we get started, I do have to say a very special thank you. I know guys have been subscribing to the channel. We appreciate that. We put out content Monday through Friday. So the whole idea is we're trying to help you guys become better fishermen. And I have to send a big shout out. We're starting to get what YouTube calls super thanks, where you guys are actually sending us a few bucks, to kind of support the channel. Subscribing to the channel, sending those super thanks. Those are all things that you can do to support the channel. We absolutely appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing that. So let's talk about today's tip. And again, it has to do with chatterbaits. We know that throwing a chatterbait in the springtime is a great bait to throw, but here's where we're going to get a little specific and a little something that I don't think a lot of guys do a whole lot, and that is downsizing that chatterbait. Jackhammer makes what they call the chatterbait mini, and this is a smaller size. I've got one here that's out of the package. This is your typical chatterbait. And I've got a Zako on that right there. Okay. Now here is the chatterbait mini right next to it. You can see how much smaller that is. Now, the Zako that I have, this is a 3-inch Zako behind it. It's not the color that I would typically use on this. And we're going to talk about what color I would recommend in just a second. But here's the thing about this chatterbait mini. When you're throwing a chatterbait in the springtime, and I'm talking about throwing this bait up in shallow water, where there's maybe some green grass that's starting to grow up in that springtime shallow water. This is when the bass are starting to move shallow, thinking about spawning. Well, it's also the same time that those little bluegill are up there. And those little bluegill aren't much bigger than, that big. And this imitates those little bluegill up in and around the grass that are up shallow during the spring. So if you take a green pumpkin type of a mini chatterbait and you put a little 3-inch Zako behind that as a trailer, I like the sprayed grass. That's the color that I'd like to put on this. You're imitating that little bluegill as it's swimming through the shallow water in the springtime. And I'm telling you what, guys, you will get bit on a mini chatterbait way, way more than you'll get bit on the full-size chatterbait. Now, I will tell you that from a standpoint of bigger fish, I've yet to catch my biggest fish are always caught on a full-size chatterbait or a regular-size chatterbait. But I'm telling you what, when it comes to catching numbers of fish and catching that limit, this chatterbait mini is the way to go in the springtime. And I'm promoting it for the springtime, meaning because that's the time I'm going to throw this. But you can catch fish on this bait throughout the year when you may not catch as many on the chatterbait. It just has a tendency, like I said, to imitate some of those smaller bluegill that are up and around that shallow cover. There isn't anything different. You throw it same type of rod and line and everything that you would normally throw a chatterbait. What I do need to tell you about is the fact that the vibration is going to be much subtler on the mini than it is on the regular chatterbait. When you throw that regular chatterbait, you expect to feel that thud, 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 thud on in your rod tip. This is going to be a much more subtle vibration. You're going to feel it, but it's not gonna thud as much as just kind of tick, 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 tick. And you don't want to overwork this, meaning reel it a lot faster. You still want to have that nice slow retrieve, get that blade going back and forth, and throw the chatterbait mini around docks, laydowns, but 100%, if you've got new grass that's coming up in those shallows and you can throw it through, work it through the grass. If you find a hole or a place where it's sparse, then let it kind of fall down into that, work it along grass lines or weed lines. This is the kind of thing that is going to get bit in the spring. I know it's a little early to start thinking about this, but boy, you need to get some of these nice little chatterbait minis and get yourself some Zakos in like the sprayed grass, or they've got a color just called Zako that's a nice bluegill imitating kind of color. Look for a color that's got some purples in it, some greens, and be able to, imitate a little bluegill. The one other thing that I will say is, before I threw this, I would be trimming down those skirts. We had an episode that we did a while back about trimming skirts on your jigs. I would do the same thing here. I'd be trimming that skirt so that it's just past the hook. Speaking of hooks, I need to tell you about that. This hook on here, it's the exact same weight of a hook, meaning it's got that same thickness of hook on the mini that they do on the full-size chatterbait. So you don't have to worry about the fact that you're downsizing your bait and going to a hook that isn't as stout. It is just as stout, just as sharp. It's perfect on this little mini chatterbait. So guys, I highly recommend it. It's something that me and a few guys have been talking about and using, and I'm really thrilled about using it this spring. I'm deciding that now is the time to kind of put this out there and let people know. Get this stuff going before springtime comes. I think you're really going to find that you catch a lot more fish in the springtime using the chatterbait mini. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in, and we will be back again tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.